What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, July 27th, 2017, getting down to the end of the month here. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today here. The phone lines are open and working, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And, well, let's get right on into the news here. Here's a story which cuts right to the heart of things, and this is coming out of Mondo Weiss. And it's a question everybody is starting to ask. Oliver Stone asked it on the CBS show that he was on, and CBS edited it out. Basically, it's that Russian meddling, which there's no evidence of it, it's Watergate, it's a scandal, it's horrific, but Israelis clearly demonstrated and proven meddling in our internal affairs. That's okay. And I think more and more people are starting to ask why that is, why our own government seems to be okay with being controlled and ruled and dominated by a foreign power. Now, if you look at all these other countries where the U.S. has gone on in and installed a puppet ruler, those people are standing up and fighting back because they can see over time that when you have a puppet ruler running your country, the quality of life in your country goes down, everything deteriorates, you're driven into poverty because all the wealth of the nation is being siphoned off for that foreign government that is ruling your country with puppets. And we seem to be in that same situation here. Now, Lincoln claimed we had a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That doesn't exist anymore. We have a Vichy government. We have a bunch of C who are plundering this nation on behalf of Israel. We have a bunch of traitors in Washington, D.C. who are sending your children out to fight wars against Israel's enemies. And I think people need to start getting angry about that. Now, turning on over to more domestic affairs here. Oddly enough, former President George W. Bush chief ethics lawyer Richard Painter has come on out saying that President Donald Trump calling for the prosecution of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is an impeachable offense. No, it isn't. It absolutely is not. Even the FBI admitted she was guilty of felony violations of Title 18. They should be prosecuted. And what this is more proof that the Clintons and the Bushes are partners in the narcocracy, that they're joined at the hip going all the way back to Arkansas in the mid-1980s with all the gun and cocaine running that was going on. They're clearly afraid. If there's any breach in their defenses, it's all going to start to unravel. And the breach may be about to happen surrounding Debbie Wasserman Schultz because the situation with Imran Awan is really beginning to deteriorate. Apparently, WikiLeaks has released an email that actually connects Nancy Pelosi to Imran Awan. And, of course, as you remember, Awan was caught attempting to flee the U.S. Monday night. And apparently transferred or tried to transfer $300,000 to his home in Pakistan. So he was bailing on out. A lot of money for a guy on a, well, he was actually getting paid very well by Debbie Wasserman Schultz, over $100,000 a year for what was essentially a part-time job. Now, Awan has retained a longtime Clinton associate, Chris Gowen, for legal help in dealing with this. And, of course, Chris Gowen has already issued a statement saying that this is just Islamophobia, there's nothing there, and he's just blaming everybody without addressing the actual facts of the matter, the hard drives, the FBI situation, and the fact that, yes, he was caught trying to flee the country. Now, again, we're hearing from people inside that there may have been a link between Imran and Seth Rich that needs to be looked into. And by the way, this is big news all over the internet, all over the independent media. The three major network news departments, NBC, CBS, and NBC, have completely ignored it. It's not important. Pay no attention to this. You don't want to be looking at anything having to do with the Bushes or the Clintons. You just leave them alone. Public interest is failing. That's why we're not reporting on it. Public interest is not failing. And this story gets better and better and better because apparently this Imran Awan got into some legal trouble. It involved basically, he was involved with this individual who was very ill and took out a life insurance policy for $500,000, naming the guy's wife as beneficiary, then somehow gained control of the policy administrative rights and changed the beneficiary to himself. And the wife called the police, and Imran threatened that he would have the wife's relatives back in Pakistan kidnapped and killed if she ever called the police again. And right now that whole insurance thing is in the courts right now because of the obvious fraud involved there. So he's in a lot of trouble, and he better start thinking about making some kind of a deal. And apparently had a lot of money. Remember, along with all the rest of it, Imran was one of these IT people who were caught hacking into the computers of members of Congress to steal information, stuff they could be blackmailed with. Maybe that's the connection to Nancy Pelosi. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates rejoining our network. But there's a big stink here. This may be the big crack that's going to start breaking all of this stuff wide open. And we have to keep the pressure up on it. We, the people, are going to have to go back to those news networks and say, yeah, this is an important story. Remember when Tony Blair's the Downing Street memo first came on out, which admitted they were building a propaganda case around an already existing decision to go to war against Iraq. And it was big news on the internet, and we made it a big stink. And it was a whole month until finally the corporate media had to report on it because it was becoming very, very obvious that they were trying to keep a lid on that. And we can do that again. Now, Imran may have been trying to leave the country because of all the strange deaths that have been going on. You know, there was that Wall Street Journal editorial writer a week ago. And then Peter Smith, 10 days after being interviewed by mainstream media about his investigation of Bill and Hillary Clinton, was found dead and immediately declared a suicide. Unfortunately, information about the exact cause of death is not being released by either the Chicago police or the coroner. We don't need to show you the facts. Just take our word for it. Really, it's like Vince Foster all over again. No, you don't need to count the bullet holes on the body. Just take our word for it. It's a suicide. Now, Donald Trump is continuing his war of words with Attorney General Jeff Sessions, because at this point it is very obvious that Sessions is avoiding going up against the Clintons. Either he's part of that narcocracy or he's simply scared. In either case, he is not suited to be the Attorney General of this country. Now, Donald Trump would have a hard time replacing him, having to go through a congressional confirmation cycle, because Congress is only going to confirm attorney generals who are going to go along with keeping the cover-up on the narcocracy. But there is a rule out there called a recess appointment. Congress is about to go into recess for the month of August, and during that time, Donald Trump could fire Jeff Sessions and just appoint a new interim attorney general without need for a congressional confirmation, and that attorney general would have the job through the end of the year. And apparently a lot of people are suggesting to Donald Trump that he should do just that. Get somebody in there who's actually going to start going after some of these high-level criminals. Now, over at IB Times, they have an article by Thomas Frank, What's the Matter with the Democrats? And it's looking at this pattern of failure over the last 10 years, where they lost the White House, they lost the Congress, most governorships, hundreds of legislative seats. And Thomas Frank is basically saying that they made a mistake promoting these corporate-friendly leaders like Hillary Clinton, and yes, that was a big whoopsie. They were deliberately blocking more progressive icons like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And as the 2018 election approaches, Frank is arguing that the Democratic Party has made a catastrophic mistake by cozying up to the big money and disavowing its New Deal roots. And he's absolutely right. Now, traditionally, the Republicans have always been thought of as the party of the rich people, but the Democrats sold themselves as the party of ordinary people. And they destroyed that reputation. Their primary defining claim was destroyed over the last 10 years, especially last year. By the way, Hillary Clinton has yet another new book coming on out. It's called What Happened? And it's basically looking back at her election defeat last year, and she blames absolutely everybody except herself. And apparently Hillary was convinced she had it. I mean, the corporate media were putting up all these polls saying she had a 95% chance of winning. And she hasn't changed. She's still the same person. She's delusional. She's blaming sexism. She lost because men couldn't vote for a woman as president, with discrimination, and of course the Russian hackers. She's still out there pushing this idea that Russia stole the election from her to give to Donald Trump. I don't think anybody's going to buy the book. In fact, most of her books have turned out to be retail disasters. I remember when It Takes a Village came on out, and it was heralded as this brilliant piece. Everybody has to buy it. It made the New York Times bestseller list, which we now know it's easy to rig that as well. And a month later, it was in the manager's closeout bin. Now, as you know, a lot of people are up in arms over Donald Trump's announcement that transgenders will not be allowed to serve in the military in any capacity, which may turn out to be a good thing, because if these wars really heat up and they bring back the draft, all you're going to have to do is go before the draft board and say, I'm actually a woman inside, and you're automatically off the hook there. But apparently, General Joseph Dunford, who's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, came on out and said there won't be any change to the transgender policy. And he's saying there has to be a clarification of the president's policy direction, and Secretary of Defense Mattis has to determine how to implement it. It's a stalling tactic. And again, they're using this to kick up another fuss to try and distract us away from things like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her IT guy and all that he's done. Because right now that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to keep Americans from looking at this hideous, rotted mess at the heart of our own government. Now, Donald Trump is absolutely right. The military is not a place to be trying social experimentation, especially if you're heading into war. You go with what you know works. Now, speaking of the wars and military, the Syrian army is accomplishing their mop-up operations in eastern Raqqa, and they're getting ever closer to ISIL's last bastion in the region. They've captured more of the back areas. It looks like they're going for an encirclement. And at this point, the eventual defeat of ISIL and al-Qaeda in Syria, it's only a matter of time. And the U.S. cannot figure out a way to get back into that fight. Even with all the lies about Assad gassing the people at Idlib, cruise missile attacks. Assad and Putin have the U.S. military, the U.S. war hawks, pretty much checkmated there, which is why they're trying to kick up more trouble over in the Philippines. If we can't make money on a war in Syria, we'll go start a war in the Philippines. Doesn't really matter. The money spends just as well. A very significant development is Russia has signed a 49-year extension on their use of a Syrian air base. This is in Latakia, the Khmaimin Air Base. And 49-year extension is sending a signal that the result of the U.S. attempt to regime change Syria has driven Syria into the Russian sphere of influence. Now, taking over Syria was part of the plan to encircle Iran, and that's not working out because Syria is pulling away from the U.S., Turkey's starting to pull away from the U.S., Iran is aligning with Russia. That whole Middle Eastern policy is falling apart, and it has cost a huge amount of money and lots of lives. And those poor people living in those war zones will be decades rebuilding from all the bombing and the damage, especially if you look at the before and after pictures of Mosul. It doesn't matter which side claims victory, the people who live in Mosul, they have had their lives destroyed. Now, a ceasefire went into effect early this morning between Hezbollah and Jabhat Fatah al-Sham. They brokered a deal overnight for the group to withdraw entirely from Lebanon to Syria's Idlib in exchange for the return of 4 captured Hezbollah fighters. So Nasrallah is hailing the Arsil victory and says that Hezbollah is now ready to turn all the lands that they took from the terrorists over to official control of the Lebanese army. And I think they did that to sort of put the lie to Donald Trump out there saying that, Hezbollah is a threat to Lebanon. They're not. Hezbollah has been defending Lebanon from attacks by Israel. And now they have driven this attempt to drag the Syrian war into Lebanon has now been repulsed. And Hezbollah is now saying to the government of Lebanon, this is your land now. Come on back in and take care of it. Russian military police are monitoring the ceasefire near the Golan Heights. And so far, so good. But we're seeing more and more of this talk in Israel that the world must recognize that Golan is part of Israel. So we may yet see more difficulty there. Now, getting on back to Turkey and the fact that it seems to be moving away from the United States of America, ex-Pentagon officials are expressing their concern that maybe it's time for the United States to pull its nuclear weapons from Turkey's Incirlik air base over these tensions between Washington and Ankara, because those nuclear weapons are not secure there. And that if there were to be a serious breach between the U.S. and Turkey, those U.S. nuclear weapons could very quickly become Turkish nuclear weapons. The International Red Cross is urging Western countries to assist in halting the Saudi war on Yemen, and basically saying it is this horrible humanitarian disaster, and it doesn't seem to be serving any purpose whatsoever. Well, we know what the real purpose is. The U.S. had a successful intervention in Yemen some years ago and installed a puppet regime, and the people of Yemen kicked out that puppet regime. And the U.S. got Saudi Arabia to go on in as a proxy to slap those people of Yemen down and say, look, once you're conquered by us, you stay conquered. You learn to love your puppet rulers. And the people of Yemen aren't really all that happy about that idea. Now, down in Venezuela, and I want to preface all of this stuff with the reminder that the head of the CIA has admitted that the U.S. is carrying out a regime change operation in Venezuela. So this week is going to be very intense. Right now today, the opposition is staging its second nationwide strike, and then tomorrow there's going to be another mass protest. Meanwhile, Venezuelans are stockpiling food and water against what they see as a coming crisis. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here today. And getting on back to Venezuelans, in the Bloomberg article that's talking about how the Venezuelans are stockpiling food, you can read the slant in this thing about how Maduro is grabbing power and he's turning into a dictator and the Venezuelans hate him. And again, this is part of the propaganda coming out of the U.S. regime change operation, which the head of the CIA says, yeah, we're down there in Venezuela trying to kick out their government and put in one that will be more amenable to our interests. Now, here is an interesting little article that came out of Free Beacon. CIA gives more power to spies to bolster intelligence operations. Pompeo is out there saying, again, China's the big threat, not Russia. It poses the greatest long-term threat. What's interesting about the article is they clarify what they mean by a threat. It means that both Russia and China, but especially China, are getting in the way of U.S. power projection across the world. I mean, they're actually admitting, we are trying to conquer the world, and they're just spoiling everything. And that's why we have to hate them. It's amazing. Over in Israel, things are still very tense there around the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Still a lot of protests, a lot of violence going on. And it is deliberate. More and more people are saying this is obviously deliberate up at Global Research in Canada. Israel's deliberate trajectory towards an escalating conflict. And it basically says that Netanyahu is basically trying to start another war with Hezbollah and Hamas. And it's part of that expansionist policy, Eretz Israel. And, of course, Netanyahu has his own political problems. He's in trouble for corruption. And he figures a war will take everybody's mind off of it. Story coming out of 21st Century Wire. They're quoting Dan Cohen. But apparently Israeli leaders and politicians are openly talking about taking over the Temple Mount and destroying the Al-Aqsa Mosque so they can start building the third temple, which will signal the arrival of the Messiah. Now, there actually has already been a third temple. And after it was built and the Messiah didn't show up, they decided to rebrand it and say, well, it was just a renovation of the second temple. It doesn't count as a third temple because the Messiah didn't show up. But the Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third holiest site in Islam. The instant they take a wrecking ball to that thing, it's going to ignite the entire Middle East in a war. And Israel will turn around and scream at the United States, you've got to save us, you've got to save us. And the U.S. government is going to say, yes, we got lots of young people here, can't find a job, we're going to draft them and send them on over there. Another article on the same topic over at Al Monitor, titled Netanyahu's Dangerous Delusions, and talking about the open contempt the Israeli leadership has for any kind of a two-state solution. Israel wants it all, just like they've grabbed the Golan. In fact, if you look at the maps of Israel from its creation to the present day, it's very obvious who is wiping who off the map. Now, Press TV interviewed Scott Rickard, who's a political analyst and former American intelligence linguist, and along with Jim Walsh, who's a research associate with MIT Security Studies programs at MIT, and basically came on out and said, it's obvious the U.S. Congress is following the Israeli anti-Iran agenda. And yes, that's absolutely true. They can't decide on health care for the American people. But, oh, yes, when we're going to put more sanctions on Iran and just punish them and make them feel bad, it was a veto-proof majority. Which gets back to what I was saying at the very top of the show. Who is the U.S. government really working for? Doesn't seem to be the American people. And then we have Congress that is passing these very dangerous laws trying to criminalize support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement or criticism of Israel. More about that when we come back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. So we're talking about these laws that basically would criminalize support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And it is obviously an attack on freedom of speech here for Americans. It is a clear violation of the First Amendment, because boycotts are a recognized form of peaceful protest. But it goes beyond that. It's basically Israel's attempt to declare that Palestinians do not have the same political rights as people in other nations with regards to their individual political expression. Israel's ultimate goal appears to be to make it illegal for anyone to criticize the actions of Israel's government, and that is a sure sign of growing dictatorship. And as a good example of that, Netanyahu now wants to kick Al Jazeera out of Israel because their coverage of what Israel is doing has been less than glowingly positive. Okay, getting over to Ukraine. Things are really kind of piling up over there. Poroshenko is now under investigation by his own government for treason. We don't have the details, but it's pretty serious there. Remember former president of Georgia, Saakashvili, and he was brought to Ukraine by Poroshenko to be the governor of Odessa, and then he lost that job, and he's hanging out here in the United States of America. His Ukrainian citizenship has now been formally revoked. So apparently there's been a big falling out over there. And so the U.S. government, meaning you, the taxpayers, are paying the salaries of Saakashvili's staff and security, which tells you who he was really working for all along. All right, the U.S. Navy is testing their newest whiz-bang device. It's the railgun that supposedly can fire a projectile at 6 times the speed of sound. So far, all the tests have been internal to the proving grounds, and now they're going to take it out and actually have its first test outside the laboratory. And they're out there going, it's Star Wars technology, and it's going to be wonderful, and it's going to be this. You know, all of these weapons, they seem to do very well in the lab, and then when they get out in the real world, things happen. Now, obviously, anything that is flinging a projectile to speeds of Mach 6, there's going to be a lot of stress and strain on that. And in this case, we're talking about these magnetic coils, which ultimately are bearing the load of that acceleration. And I'm going to speculate that there's going to be a high breakage rate for those. Just based on some work I did when I was younger playing with Tesla coils. If you didn't build them absolutely right, they would tear themselves apart. Apparently, Boris Johnson is playing down rumors that he will launch another Conservative Party leadership bid. And he's out there telling reporters he wants to avoid the political kerfuffle. But the fact that the rumors are out there are suggesting that he may be testing the waters to see what kind of a response he might get for that. Over at Nike, they've had a bad year, along with pretty much everybody else in the retail sector. And the CEO, Mark Parker, is taking a 71% pay cut this year. He will make $13.9 million, mostly from stock and option awards. And apparently, let's see, according to regulatory filings posted, he made $47.6 million in 2016, was one of the best paid CEOs in America. And I'll bet you the people who are actually making those shoes don't actually make that kind of money. Now, billionaire investor Howard Marks is sounding another warning about Bitcoin, calling it a fad or a pyramid scheme. And people are listening to him because Howard Marks is the guy who predicted there was going to be that crash. You know, it was going up and up and up, and everybody said, hop on board, and he said, there's going to be a crash, and yes, there was. In fact, it almost looked like a classic bump and dump scam. And he's compared cryptocurrencies, all of them together, to the tulip mania of 1637, the South Sea bubble of 1720, and the internet bubble of 1999. And I think there's some validity there. Bitcoin is not a store of value. Nothing that actually has intrinsic worth changes in price that quickly by that much. Now, Putin has responded to the latest round of sanctions on Russia, saying Moscow will have to respond to U.S. arrogance, which is exactly what this is. U.S. arrogance. We will sanction you. We run the world. And Putin is signaling that Russia's patience is beginning to run out. Meanwhile, over in Europe, France is actually questioning the legality of these new U.S. sanctions on Russia and Iran and North Korea, saying that they do not conform to international law due to their extraterritorial reach. In other words, France is saying under international law, the United States can sanction Russia all it wants, but they can't command any other nation to go along with it. And it's looking like that might happen. Story coming out of TASS. Brussels is seriously considering declaring all of these U.S. anti-Russian sanctions invalid. This is coming from Moscow's envoy to the European Union. In other words, all of Europe is going to say, the sanctions don't apply to us any longer. We're not going to go along with it. And they'll go back to doing trade with Russia. Now, getting on over to the Brexit, everybody is talking tough here. Brussels is saying they can block Britain's trade deal with the United States. And basically, this is a threat. And I'm not sure how they could do it, whether the EU plans on actually invading Great Britain or blockading it at sea. Right now, the European Union has been warned that Britain might just leave with no deal over this argument over the rule of the European Court of Justice. Because part of the EU's demands on Great Britain is that it will still be subordinate to the European Court of Justice, and Great Britain doesn't want that. I think Britain should just get out there right now, because now the European Union is threatening to simply delay the Brexit talks until Great Britain agrees to pay this huge divorce bill. Again, it all comes back to the money. The European Union, without all the money they've been getting from Great Britain, will collapse. It's already on the verge of collapse. Great Britain and Germany have been carrying the load of all of the economic privation brought down on Europe by the European Central Bank. Germany can't carry it alone, and the German people won't go along with carrying it alone. Meanwhile, some of the Eastern European member states have launched this pushback against European Union judges, insisting that they are never going to accept any ruling forcing them to accept migrant quotas. They're getting ready to simply walk away and say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And still the globalists and open border people are out there. I mean, you have all these people, these human smugglers are just sailing across the Mediterranean, bringing all these people in. And there was a group called Defend Europe that's trying to slow this down. And they have a ship called the Sea Star that is chartered by Defend Europe that was basically going on out on patrol missions in the Mediterranean to simply find and turn back boatloads full of migrants. Well, apparently the ship was stopped when it was in northern Cyprus, and the ship's officers and crew were arrested, supposedly on a charge of falsifying documents. But it looks like somebody just wanted them out of the way so they could keep on pouring the migrants into Europe. This was a very creative solution over here. The French government bought this resort. I guess it was not doing very well, but they basically bought this resort in this very nice French town, and they're turning it into a migrant shelter. And the residents of this town were absolutely opposed, and they were told, none of your business. Well, the residents decided very simply to build a wall around that resort on their land. They didn't go onto the resort's land, But they got everybody whose land abutted the resort to go along with this, and they're building this huge wall. Because France is seeing with her own eyes what this influx of refugees and migrants is doing. How it's destroying the character of Europe, the identity of Europe. Dramatic increases in crimes, sexual assaults, the reintroduction of diseases that had formerly been eradicated in Europe. For the people of Europe, it's all downside. There's no upside to any of it. All of these migrants and refugees, it's an average of 2 years before they integrate and find a job to support themselves, during which time they are a huge, huge burden on Europe's social systems. Now, up in Brussels, Jean-Claude Juncker wants to block Chinese takeovers of European firms. And I'm not sure how much of a problem this really is. It sounds to me like Juncker is creating a new enemy, China, to try and bring Europe back together. Yes, we've got our squabbles. Yes, we've got all this other stuff here. But, we've got to deal with China here. And, of course, the Chinese takeovers are partly Juncker's fault, because the management of the European Union has made the country into some serious economic problems. And so these cash-rich Chinese companies are basically coming on in, and they're making sweet deals to acquire critical European infrastructure. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I just wanted to chime in on the anti-boycott thing, which had about 45 senators backing it.
Yep.
And I understand 250 congressmen.
Yes.
And these are people who are, it's unprecedented in my opinion, in the history of the United States, which I'm pretty up on, that there's ever been an ethnic or racial or religious group who has ever attempted this before, or even had the power to attempt it, let alone have 45 co-sponsoring, endorsing people, or 250 in the House. It's pretty indicative of just how completely owned. And then when you talk, and you look on the mainstream media, they don't cover it at all, which is another, a thing that's indicative of where we are.
Yes.
We don't cover it at all, Mike.
No, the corporate media is never going to report any story that makes Israel look bad or abusive, and certainly they're never going to run any story that shows to the American people that we do have a puppet ruler, a puppet government in Washington, D.C., that is actually serving a foreign nation more than the American people.
It's almost unanimous for them up there, and they just simply pay out the money and get what they want. But no other ethnic group or religious group or whatever, however you want to classify them, has ever done this or even attempted it or even had the resources to even attempt it before. They're unique in that sense. And I know it's the silent, the Jewish. I'm not even sure if it's a majority, but the silence is deafening about this, and they'll take the advantages of being able to shout people down and ruin their careers and call them anti-Semites and all that. But they don't want. But they'll never speak up. And we've talked about this before. And damn few will come out and say this is really wrong. I'm against it. I wanted to make one other point too, Michael, and that is you were talking about Netanyahu and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. You're right that he's a precarious. Legal Netanyahu situation.
Yes.
There's also what seems to be a vanishing window, Mike. If they really want to expel everybody, which they have done in big numbers, of course, not since back in the 40s and the War of Independence, but now it's becoming clear they can't expel these people into Syria because the Syrians have won and the Russians are there.
Yes.
So that means they're going to have to open up Lebanon, which we see an increased hostility toward Hezbollah. But they have to open up hostilities with Lebanon, and it doesn't look like even though Jordan is a puppet, Israel has so much more clout than Jordan that maybe they could drive some of them there. But
well, there are already Palestinian refugee camps in all of those countries, including Jordan, and these countries are telling Israel, we simply cannot take any more. I mean, the Palestinians, a large part of the population was driven entirely out of Palestine during the creation of Israel, and they and their descendants have been living in these refugee camps, and it's a big, deep, dark secret that nobody wants to talk about. Obviously, this attempt to drag the Syrian war into Lebanon may have been part of a plan to get Lebanon to start accepting Palestinians, but Hezbollah successfully thwarted that. Israel's been talking about sending the Palestinians to the northern Sinai, and of course, Egypt really isn't all that hot about it. But again, it's just Israel is this rogue state that has caused so much suffering and trouble in the world, and everybody's afraid of them right now.
Mike, if they try to demolish Al-Aqsa, even Egypt, which is a completely Israeli-dominated, Israel and U.S. Dominated regime, they couldn't even take those people in as refugees, given the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, or what would be happening then. Even their rule would be tenuous if they did. But they're running out of places to drive these people, really.
Well, I think that's why they're looking for an excuse to just go on in and bomb them and just, the final solution to the Palestinian question. Peter, got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, coming in here to the top of the hour. And like I said before, the phone lines are working, so we could use some callers in here. There's been another one of these horrible incidents where the police went to the wrong house to serve a warrant. The homeowner went to the front door to see what was going on, and the police just shot and killed him. The home they really wanted was across the street. And, of course, the usual thing happened. The police came on out and said, we felt threatened. The guy had a gun, and there was a gun in the house, but it wasn't anywhere near the front door. And apparently, the examination of the door seems to indicate the police just shot through the door when they heard the guy on the other side. So it is really an out-of-control situation. So what is going on here? Is it prescription antidepressants? Article over at uns.com. America's militarized police made in Israel. And it starts by going on back to that Australian woman in her pajamas that called the police because she thought some kind of a sexual assault was going on outside of her home. The police showed up. She was talking to the police through the driver's side window of the car, and for no apparent reason anybody can understand, the second officer on the passenger side drew his gun and shot this woman, killed her. And this article goes on to say that a big part of the problem right now is that the United States has been hiring these Israeli security companies to turn our civilian police force into an occupation force in advance of a possible civic uprising. And now Britain is getting ready to do exactly the same thing. These days, if you call the police, you do so at your own peril. The police are stealing more from the American people through civil forfeiture than all the muggers, burglars, and thieves out there. They're murdering more innocent Americans than the terrorists and the mass killers put together. Is it part of a campaign to keep us all terrorized so we don't say anything, we don't stand up? You don't have to be all that old to look back and realize how dramatically life in the United States. And right now, because of all this Israeli training, the police department are treating the American people the way the IDF treats the Palestinians. That's what they're being taught to do. It's very upsetting out there. Okay, now the gun grabbers who are Oh, we got to take a station break. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we have callers on the line. We're going to start with Sheldon in Washington State. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, real quick. Only two things. The other day you were talking about Soylent Green, and you said there was another movie you should watch that had equal importance. What was that title again?
Oh, boy. I'm trying to remember the context of that conversation. No, it's Cloud Atlas. It's a much more recent movie, and it had the same similar theme that used up humans were being used as food for the newer humans, the younger humans.
Oh, so they were after all the old and decrepit and the homeless and stuff, huh?
Well, actually, everybody was sort of terminated at age 30. Remember Logan's Run? And they weren't real humans. They were replicants. They were clones. So they weren't considered, real property. And, when they were at the end of their useful lifespan, they were terminated and turned into food. And, of course, the others who were being fed this food weren't being told, which was the same theme, of course, in Soylent Green. And, we're really facing a major problem. In fact, earlier today, Claire and I had to go back down to the supermarket because yesterday we had bought some ground beef, and we got home, and Claire opened it up, and immediately, horrible smell. It had gone bad, and we looked at it, and it turned out the expiration date on that package had gone by days ago. And it was still out there in the counter, the cooler for sale yesterday. And we took it back to the store, and I'm not going to tell you which store it was because they made good on it. We got a replacement and everything. But at this point, you got to check those X dates, especially on things that go bad quickly like meat and dairy. Because apparently...
Okay, and then to answer your question,
yep.
Nobody other than military and law enforcement is exposed to the multitude and the intensity and the many kinds of EMF than people who sit in a car with different frequencies of radios going all day, not just cell phones, AM, FM, military, radar, the same thing, all kinds of microwaves. All you have is broadcasting and a cell phone. These cops sit in these cars all day long with all these frequencies, and when they get rattled, it's bullets away. Thanks for your time.
All right, well, we're going to let you go there. I don't know that that's necessarily as much a factor as the fact that they're being trained to be brutal, to shoot first and ask questions later. And again, we know that prescription antidepressants can be a factor. There was a study done down in Florida that showed police are far higher users of these medications than the average American. And the average American, it's already 25%. 1 out of every 4 Americans is on these medications. And they can fry your brain. They can flip you out. We got some stories about that a little bit later in the show. All right, let's change over to Karen in Maryland. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, I have 2 questions for you concerning Wi-Fi internet access and smart meters. Mm-hmm. And basically the question is, I'm not sure whether you utilize those things yourself, but my question is, if, your neighbors, if those to your left and your right and behind you, in front of you and whatnot, if everybody else has a smart meter, if everybody else has Wi-Fi internet access, then does it make any difference if you go without it? If you have it or if you don't have it, what difference does it make if it completely surrounds you?
Well, the intensity of the radiation is going to fall off based on the inverse square law. So the further away the radiative source is, the less you're going to be impacted. But instead of looking about, whether the Wi-Fi is a problem, and yes, obviously we have Wi-Fi here, or whether smart meters are a problem, and no, they're not here at this part of Hawaii yet, what you need to do is just realize the sum total of electromagnetic radiation in the environment, coming from AM radio, all the stations, FM radio, all the stations, the military radars, of which we have a lot here in Hawaii, the over-the-air TV broadcasting for those areas that still use it, ham radio, CB, the VHF private channel that businesses are using, police bands, all of that added together. It's a huge amount of energy that's out there, and it is a concern when you look at that sum total. About whether there could be a problem. I remember many years ago when I was working down in Australia, and they were going through a program there where TV and radio stations had been located in the residential neighborhoods they served. A lot of radio stations are still doing that. But Australia was going through a program of resiting the actual transmitters and antennas further away, and it gave these broadcasters a much larger broadcast pattern. But the main reason was concern that being that close to a powerful transmitter was going to result in some serious health consequences. And that's one reason why in Los Angeles, all the really big transmitters are now up on Mount Wilson. And so there is an issue there. And as I mentioned yesterday, a lot of very wealthy people are building their own homes, and they're building them to be Faraday cages, so that this electromagnetic radiation is stopped at the wall, and anything they need to have on the inside, they bring in like cable TV or a wire to a specific antenna to just sort of cut that down.
So you're saying it does make a difference if you personally have it because you'll be closer to it than if you don't personally have it.
True, but when you compare it to the total amount of electromagnetic radiation that's saturating the environment, it's really, it's almost a negligible increase.
Okay, that's what you're getting at.
Yes, that's what I'm
got
getting
it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. I think the primary concern with smart meters is not whether they're another radiating source or not. It's that there have been cases where these things are exploding. There are cases where the smart meters, for some reason, result in much larger bills than the old-fashioned spinning wheel meters. And finally, of course, concern that with the Internet of Things, the smart meter is just another way for the government to peek into your home and see what you're doing. For example, why are you running, the oven at 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that? Is there a drug lab going on over there? We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates. We're going to go back to the phones here. William in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael.
Aloha.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you are on the air.
Thank you. I was wondering about a comment you made a couple shows back there about Lord Balfour and the Balfour Declaration, and in that period there was a nest of Jewish spies.
Yes.
I was wondering, did the word blackmail come into your mind?
Oh, obviously.
Even
I mean, that's one of the primary tools of spycraft or even statecraft. And when we're talking about this story of these IT people inside the Capitol building, they were breaking into the computers of congressmen. One of the things they had to be looking for was blackmail material.
Of course.
Okay, I mean, look at that Dennis Hastert. Look! He was blackmailed most of his life because of what he'd been doing. Young
boys and
very, very much so. Okay.
Okay. So I'm just curious if this guy, Foreign Secretary Arthur James Balfour, was being blackmailed. Even back in November of 1917. Obviously, this whole state of Israel bullshit is apart.
Please watch your language. Yes, yeah, that's a problem for our on-air affiliates.
Oh, really? Okay, sorry about that.
Well, a lot of people have looked back at the Balfour Declaration and said this was the beginning of the founding of the State of Israel. but a lot of people have raised the issue under international law that Palestine really didn't belong to Great Britain. Great Britain was administering it, but Great Britain didn't really have the right to give it away to anybody, including Israel. And ultimately, of course, Israel simply invaded Palestine and said, we're Israel and we're here to stay.
The poor Palestinians.
Yes.
Oh, well. Okay, that's all I wanted. I wanted to refresh this topic because obviously a lot of Christians think that the Bible is the Word of God and all of that baloney.
Well,
Anyway.
Israel has successfully co-opted much of the Christian community in the United States to be their supporters, including what's called the Christian Zionist movement, which that itself is part of the immense power they have over our society. Are the Christians who are absolutely convinced that present-day Israel is basically the same as the Israel they read about in the Bible, and it isn't, because most of the Jews living in Israel are Ashkenazi, who are descended from Central Asian Khazars, and the nearest blood descendants to the biblical Hebrews are the present-day Palestinians. And there's a real through-the-looking-glass moment for you on there. William, thank you for the call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Steve in California. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I guess your female caller called two calls ago asking about the smart meters. Missed my show yesterday. I had hosted for John Stadmiller yesterday a second installment talking about EMF, smart meters, and things like that. So I would just, if she's still listening, I hope she is, I would refer her to go to Eric Windheim's website, and that's WindheimEMFsolutions.com, and he discusses the smart meters. He's quite extensive in all his EMF sources and how dirty electricity, where we can limit our exposure to it, and of course the health concerns for it. So it's Windheim, that's WINDHEIM, EMFsolutions.com. So I hope she's still listening. That was a really good show yesterday, and you can go back to the archives for John's show. I did the first show with this guy on July 5th of this year, so that's EMF show number 1, and yesterday was EMF show number 2.
Okay. Okay, I found it. I found the website. I'll post it to What Really Happened.
That sounds great. Hey, thanks, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Walt in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Walt in California, are you there? We lost him. Let's go to Kathleen in Paris. Aloha, Kathleen. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I was about your opening story about Israel tampering with the American elections and the government and everything, and nobody says anything, and, it's not in the news. Well, I mean, that's because, isn't it, that the complicit, they were, Israel and U.S. complicit on 9/11, for example, and now we're learning that the same thing happened with the USS Liberty. That at first I thought that it was only Israel bombing and trying to sink the USS Liberty, but when this new information came that there was an American sub standing by to torpedo and make sure it sank, well, that's the same thing. Collaboration for a false flag.
Yeah, absolutely. That's...
And so that's why nobody says anything. I mean, it's like, well, we can expect this kind of behavior from. So if it comes out, it's going to be worse for America than for Israel.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I, if you look at Israel's arrogance index, you see that it takes a tremendous spike upward right after 9/11. And I think probably one of the biggest foreign policy mistakes the U.S. government has made was to involve Israel in 9/11 and not realize that Israel would then turn around and blackmail the U.S. government with it from then on. and again, these things are all done with a short-term goal in mind, and without much thought or regard for what's going to happen 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
I'm looking forward to that Russian film coming out.
Yes, absolutely. It'll probably never be shown here in the United States. You're going to have to watch it over the net.
Well, I'm in France, you know.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
We see. Right. Okay, well, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much here. We're going to switch over to Alex in Florida. Aloha, Alex. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, I find it disgusting that Lindsey Graham is saying that if Trump does anything to Sessions, that there will be hell to pay. It's Trump's right to do what he wants to do with the Attorney General.
That's absolutely correct.
I mean, that's nonsense. That he's on the platform addressing the United States of America and the world, and he can say that. And there's no one in his face telling him, why do you think that is? Why do you think that you have the right to have someone have hell paid because he feels like the person in the position of his presidency is not the right person? It's a scam. He is basically he's a globalist, and it's obvious now.
Well, it's more than a scam. It's a threat. And again, the issue here is that everybody who's tied in with an narcocracy, the Clintons, the Bushes, Comey, Loretta Lynch, all these people who've been part of the drug running and the money laundering and all of that stuff, they are terrified that Trump, over the August recess, could fire Sessions and appoint a real attorney general who is going to be willing to actually start doing some prosecutions against the deep state. And that's why they're trying to send a warning saying that, we're going to impeach you, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And the sad fact of the matter is that the House could impeach on, the flimsiest of cases. Because there's no way for somebody to come on in and say to the House of Representatives, you're wrong, about all of this stuff. And so I think it wasn't just a scam. I think it's a threat. I think he was sending Trump a threat. Back off, stay away from the narcocracy. And they're acting like the mafia. You leave us alone. You get in our way, we're going to rub you out.
Yeah, it's like Debbie Wasserman Schultz telling the police department that there will be a price to be paid if you don't turn over the devices that were used to basically blackmail every Democratic and Republican congressman in the House and the Senate.
Yes,
it's a joke. He is at that level, and
yes.
It needs to be to everyone's attention that how dare you tell the president who's going to pitch the next game on his team. It's not your right. It's a joke, and it's just sickening. And I think that guy has some sins that run real deep.
Yes.
I just want. Yeah. So anyway, I just want to let you know that, and it's where we're at today with these people thinking that the rules don't matter. So that's what he's trying to say. The rules don't matter here, Mr. Trump. We have a new set of rules for you. No, we're going to go by the rules that we've always had, and we need to. They need to question him. They need to have a special prosecution or whatever, a special counsel to question him why he thinks that.
Well, it would be nice if somebody in the corporate media would ask him, but they won't do that. I mean, they're literally all locked together trying to protect this huge scandal because they all understand. On the day the American people really come to grips with the gun running, the drug running, the money laundering, the corruption, and all of it, the U.S. government is going to fall because the American people are not going to stand to have a government that is engaged in that much criminality. This is a great secret that could instantly delegitimize the entire government. And again, we're approaching Soviet Union-style collapse here. Alex, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, and it's possibly another indicator of how irretrievably corrupt and evil government has become. Apparently, California's Deputy Attorney General has just been arrested for child porn. That'll give you something to think about for a while. All right, back to the phones here. Daryl in Alabama. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Daryl?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
This is Lenny from L.A.
Okay, we had a wrong button on there, so let's go with Lenny in L.A. for a while. What's on your mind?
Yes, I want to speak to the legislation that I also consider to be a serious threat to free speech, and to Peter from Los Angeles, who called in earlier and said this is unprecedented. I beg to differ. There is a precedent before this, and these are the same type of laws that were erected in Russia by the NKVD during the deconstruction of Christianity. And that led to decades-long torture of starvation and mass murders of, right around 10 million Russians?
Yes.
This is one of the greatest genocides of human history. So there is a precedence before this, and the same game being played out, okay, by the same types of when I spoke to you last week about, what's his name, being the great-grandson of Leo Trotsky. These are just the lineage of the players down the line. And to William of Florida, quoting the poor Palestinians, I suggest people wake up and read this, the Bolshevik Revolution and what took place in Russia and the deconstruction of a Christian nation, because it's about to happen here. And you won't be saying poor Palestinians, you're going to be saying poor Americans if you don't wake up and fast.
Well, certainly this influx of Muslims into Europe is setting the stage for a civil war in which Christians and Muslims will be killing each other off, and I'm sure that Israel will be, laughing themselves silly should that happen.
Oh yeah, that seems like the intent, and and like you and I agreed before, the intent is to totally assassinate these people out of existence, and. The thing is, and I wanted to speak with you about the black kid that was killed in Greece a couple of weeks ago. He was just a black kid from Austin, Texas, in Greece with his white friends. But these weren't even Greeks. These were Serbs. And they attacked him and killed him simply because they thought he was one of the illegal migrants who came over illegally. So this is just an inkling of what could happen, what is about to happen. But the American people need to wake up and take responsibility. They got to wake up and take responsibility for themselves to see to it that it doesn't happen. I could see if it wasn't a precedent, but there is a precedent. You have a history of this being done before. You have a way to keep it from happening. Wake up and do something about it.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, and it's rather difficult situation to be in when you realize there is a foreign government that, even as it is profiting off of your money, does not really like you or care for you. And whenever Israel wants to do something, like attack the USS Liberty or 9/11, we have a government that just goes right along with them, and has clearly failed in its duty to the American people and this nation. And that's a very, very difficult situation for us all to be in. But again, I don't champion the idea of any kind of a violent revolution, because if there's one thing the U.S. government is really good at, it's killing people. But I still think that we are coming up on a Soviet Union-style collapse of this government. We got to be prepared to get through some hard times after that, and then we're going to have to pull together and decide for ourselves what the new government will be. And I think we ought to go back to that Constitution and the first 13 amendments. We don't need the Electoral College anymore, obviously. And no more private central banks, and we will have an honest election system.
Well, who was it? Maybe you can help me here. Which one of the so-called founding fathers who said that every once in a while the tree of liberty has to be watered with blood?
Thomas Jefferson.
It was Thomas Jefferson.
Yes.
Now here's the thing. I think it's romantic to read, about the Civil War, the war against the British and all of this. But maybe there does come a time when you have to fight.
Well,
Okay,
I hope you're wrong. You may be right. I'm going to have to let you go, though. We got to do a commercial break. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And apparently Julian Assange just tweeted out that Hillary Clinton should have named her new book, It Takes a Haitian Village, How I Funded My Election Campaign. And I think that hits it right on the head there. All right, we're going to finally go back to Daryl in Alabama. Daryl, thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind today?
Well, greetings, Michael, and I love your bumper music. It was great. I appreciate a little time here to talk with you. I think what your previous callers have been demonstrating clearly today is that their minds and their spirits are being afflicted by the realities here of a system that is consolidating its power.
Yes.
It's a fifth column. It's a fifth column, and it's a really interesting term for people to research a little bit. They're working from the inside, and we can see the I don't know, the decay, they call it corruption. It has intent, and I agree with you, Michael. It's going to come apart, and it's their intent, because after it comes apart and there is a crisis of anarchy and liberalism, they will step in and provide an alternative, and this has been planned for a long time. Mr. Paul Warburg, the man who actually, and I hear you speak many times about the Federal Reserve in 1913, and and to quote him in his own words, is that his goal, his big picture goal, as it were, was that the United States citizens would comply. He cared not whether it was by their consent or they were compelled. And we see the fruition of this long-range plan over many generations and decades revealing itself.
Well, a big part of the problem is that our central government has become way too powerful, and it becomes the target of corrupting forces, and is populated by people who want to be corrupted. That's why they go into politics,
yes,
for the money and the power. And that was why, when this country was started, power and authority was diffused across the land. The states were sovereign entities. The federal government arbitrated between the states only and had no authority within it. And the idea was that if you didn't have power concentrated, it was going to be that much harder for corrupting influences or outsiders to come on in and gain control. Because it was spread all over, but especially following the Civil War, the federal government just grabbed all the power and authority to itself. And again, it actually started right after the country was formed with the Federalist Papers, where they were already out there trying to say, well, we should have a stronger central government and we should be controlling everything. And it was moving along that plan that actually drove the South to secede. The issue was never really about slavery. It was about the southern states resenting the fact that they paid so much in taxes and had little voice in policy in Washington, D.C., and so they wanted to basically form their own country, which is what they went off and did. And that's what the Civil War was really all about. Lincoln used the issue of slavery to basically motivate the Union forces to go on out and fight. And so in a very real way, Lincoln lied the people into a war of conquest, much the same way that Woodrow Wilson did, and William McKinley did, and George Bush did, and so forth and so on.
Well, I have to recognize your knowledge on this. You're absolutely right. You're right over the target. I just might mention that I just produced a over 2 hour video on Civil War history and why it matters. And you're exactly correct. All you would have to do is anybody would type in into their favorite search engine the Hazard Circular that was several years pre-Civil War that will elucidate their financial plans that have come to fruition, by the way.
Yes.
So, what do the American people, the U.S. citizens, what they have it in their mind, they see it happening, that's in their spirit. There's tension. It's palpable. You can feel it. You can see it. We're experiencing it. We have a society that is either. I'm sort of going to make a general statement here, which I'm being careful about that, but it's. You kind of fall into three categories here. You fall into being compliant, complacent, or complicit. And you can kind of stand back and look at that a little bit and ask yourself the question, well, which one am I? And this is exactly what what they want.
Yes.
They have control and power. I liken the Hillary Clinton as an example, not to pick on the lady, but as an example, this power corruption cabal that exists is a self-licking ice cream cone. and
I love that image.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't. They just can't get enough of it, and until that moment of truth comes in a man or woman's stomach. Not the head, their stomach, when they know that they have to stand up and be a part of the change. I love Gerald Celente, and he'll say this over and over again. If you want change, you have to be it, and we have to recognize that the only and consistent with what you say is the methodology of affecting change, and I agree with you very much. This happens at a personal, and then a family, and then a county level.
Yes.
And if you're unsatisfied, if you want to take your power back, if you want to be an individual again, and have that responsibility, which will then yield you authority, you will start there. And I want to encourage people that this is a doable thing, but it starts with you, and then your family, and then your county. And I just applaud you guys. RBN is outstanding, and if I can give one of your co-hosts a plug.
Yes, of course.
The Michael Herzog show at 9 o'clock tonight, and with Eric, who is stepping in for Michael as he's doing great duties for RBN. They've been addressing a topic here for several nights now, and it's very illuminating, and I would just recommend to people that they try to avail themselves of this at 9 o'clock this evening. And because, what you're talking about is contemporary, and what they're talking about was the plan to set it in. So I think you guys bookend really good.
All right, well, good. Thank you very much for that here. When you talk about, you can feel the tension in the population. I mean, Claire and I have noticed it. When we first moved here to Hawaii, everybody drove slowly and carefully, and everybody was relaxed and island style. And today we're seeing so much road rage that's out there, and it is obvious that even people who don't actually understand in detail what's been going on, they can sense something has gone horribly wrong with this country. And they're out there asking questions, and the best thing that we can do is be ready with the answers. Don't go up and overwhelm them with everything that you know. Let the man ask questions, and you say, this is what's going on here. And when you run up against that thing about, the government would never lie to us about something that important, well, just say, Saddam did not have the nukes and so forth. Anyway, listen, we're going to let you go here, and we're going to switch over to Mary in Connecticut, who's been waiting very, very patiently. Mary, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Well, I was trying to answer the guy from the guy before this guy, and he was saying how Russia, Putin is related to Lenin or something, but he must have had someone in his family who was Christian. Anyhow, I just wanted to remind people that Russia, like some other countries, were taken over by, it was a planned invasion by Zionists who came over from New York and really stirred the people up and took over the country. They killed the royal family. And so, like, really, it wasn't the Russian people that brought communism in. It was an outside force that brought communism in, of the elite. That's what I wanted to say. And I wanted to say something else related to this. Years ago, I read, when I was young, because I'm 69 now, and when I was in my 20s, I read books on, like, how Israel was formed. And let's see, I can't remember all of them, but Let My People Go is one. And they basically said how they came there, and it was an empty land, basically.
Yes.
And how it was all desert, and they made it fertile. Well, then, now, recently, like a year ago or so, I saw on YouTube what Palestine looked like. It was very fertile. They had very active employment, and how they invaded towns in Israel or in Palestine, and so, like, within one day, made people get out of their houses. Even one soldier was saying how they had the kids. They wouldn't even let them put shoes on. They just shooed them out of their houses, killed some, took others.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. And if you look at pictures of Palestine before, because I was totally brainwashed, but you know what? They have brainwashed Jewish people that lived there. And then a film I saw recently by a young filmmaker too. But if you go back, but they, at the time, these towns were maybe a certain percent Muslim, some Christian, and also Jews from that land.
And they got along just fine. You know, there was no trouble between them. They were very cordial.
Just as brutal, and they were just as brutal to all of them.
You know, when the Catholic Church started expelling Jews from Europe, the Muslims in the Middle East took them in, welcomed them on in, and said, sure, we got plenty of room here. Palestine, before the formation of Israel, was a world-famous exporter of oranges. And so this idea that Israel comes on in and it's all desert and it's worthless was complete nonsense, because within a couple of years, Israel was crowing about how they were this wonderful exporter of oranges around the world. All they did was they simply took over the existing orchards from the Palestinians. And by the way, for those of you on...
Yeah, and I was totally brainwashed until I listened to a show like yours, and then I look it up. I was totally brainwashed. I'm sure a lot of other people are, too.
Well, if you've ever seen my article, Israel and Palestine, the maps tell the story, there's a huge amount of material down at the bottom documenting the existence of Palestine, the buildings that were there, the culture that was there. And for those of you watching on BAM User, I'm holding, people keep sending me these. These are coins from Palestine. Palestine did exist before Israel showed up. Golda Meir's claim that Palestine was a land without a people for a people without a land, it was pure propaganda.
I know, and I think so many people bought it and are still buying it. But I just want to add one extra thing.
Yeah.
I did study when I went to a Catholic university, and so I took some, history classes, early Greek and Rome, early Christianity, and stuff like that. And I really, the Roman Catholic Church did not begin until in the 400s.
The Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea really began the organized Roman Catholic Church.
Destroy a lot, but anyhow, they had a part in also forming. I always thought that they just wanted. Well, Augustine not only wanted to do it to maintain his power, and they still didn't like the native Christians that were there, and they tried to control them. And when they couldn't, they assisted in forming Islam. Actually, they sent somebody, a Christian woman out from Rome to be. She was one of one of Muhammad's wives and a translator, because Muhammad was not able to read and write and stuff. I'm just saying they inspire that to control those Christians they wish to wipe out in the Middle Eastern area, and when they couldn't get, and then it kind of backfired.
Okay, Mary, I'm going to have to cut you off. We're almost in the commercial break here.
Okay.
But on the front page of What Really Happened Right Now, there's a video that I put as a comment on one of the stories about Israel and Palestine, and it's a video called "God Gave This Land to Me," and it's very, very well done, and you might want to take a look at that.
I'll read it.
So
it's
Mary.
Revelation.
All right, Mary, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here, and we're going to hold off on the next phone call until after the next commercial break here, because we're running out of time here. Now, the gun grabbers, when they're not able to actually disarm the law-abiding American citizens, so the criminals can have free reign, like we're seeing in places like Chicago and Detroit, they're always talking about the smart guns. You know, it's a smart gun. It can't be used inappropriately. Only the lawful owner can use it. Unauthorized individuals like children and criminals will not be able to use it. And, of course, it's a slippery slope here. It turns out hackers have just demonstrated on the German-made Armatix IP1 smart gun, you can bypass the security mechanism with a couple of magnets. Now, the other reason you probably do not want to be talking about a smart gun is the possibility that they will be hackable, like everything else computerized in this country, which means they could be remotely disabled, which completely voids the reason the Second Amendment gives you the right to keep and bear arms. Not to mention that you could have criminals who could buy a hacking system so that when they break into your house and you try and shoot them, the gun won't work. It's a dumb idea. All right, we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to take another phone call. Terry in Oregon. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Mike, can you hear me?
I hear you just fine.
Okay. Did you say you're against the electoral college system?
Well, looking at how it was being sort of twisted and tortured and abused last year, I would say yes. And I understand that there's an argument that the Electoral College exists in order to balance the smaller states with the larger ones, but when you consider that the larger states have more electors, that seems kind of moot. And I think one of the reasons it's so easy to sway elections is that our election system is too complex. Of course, one of the reasons they created the Electoral College was to allow the government as a last resort to reject a populist candidate, which was exactly what they were trying to do last year with Donald Trump. So if you've got a better idea, I'm open to it, but I really do think that we should go back to having senators appointed by their state legislatures, and we ought to just have, a straight popular vote for all these the congressmen and president.
Well, I just don't want to see the country to be ruled by both coasts and the inner cities.
Well,
without the Electoral College having no say.
But again, like I said, both coasts and the Chicago area, they've got more electors. So you already have that problem.
Well, what if we didn't have it? Would Hillary Clinton be president now?
If we did not have an electoral college and we had an honest election system, Donald Trump would still be president.
Okay. The other thing you mentioned was the fact that, after the fall, we've got to decide what kind of government we want. Isn't that a little bit too late? If we don't know now, it's going to be too late after it falls?
Well, I mean, I want people to start thinking about it now, and we've talked about, what we would want in the new government, which is why I say that original Constitution and Bill of Rights is pretty good up to the 13th Amendment. After that, we'd have to reevaluate those higher amendments. Certainly, we would get rid of the 17th and 16th, bring back the original 13th Amendment, which was the No Emoluments Amendment, and we'll take the present 13th Amendment and make it number 14. There's all kinds of things, but we do need to start thinking about it right now. The one thing we do not want to do is allow a bunch of carpetbaggers to come on in, like they did after the South fell in the Civil War, come on in and say, we got a brand new government all set up, ready to go here, just sign your name on the dotted line, we're going to have a brand new government and a brand new private central bank, and everything's going to go back to just the way it was. And we do not want to let that happen.
Exactly. That's why we better get going now, because they're probably already waiting to do that.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they have a contingency plan, under the continuity of government program. What happens if the American people simply refuse to obey the current government? Well, we'll repackage it. We'll wrap it in a new shiny paper and put a ribbon on top, and the American people will love it. Terry, thanks a lot. We got to take a break for station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and the phone lines are open. The number is 800-313-9443, and this is hour number 3 of our program. So let's talk a little bit about computers and computer technology. As you know, they have had a major data leak over in Sweden that basically exposed sensitive information on a huge segment of the population, including the entire database on driver's licenses. And apparently what happened was the transport agency in Sweden hired IBM back in 2015 to take over the IT operations. IBM, in turn, used subcontractors in other countries who had not gone through the usual security clearance checks. And they just helped themselves to this data. And the scandal is so bad, it might actually bring the entire Swedish government down. The population there is very angry over this, because all that information is now out there for sale on the dark web. The identity thieves are going crazy. They're having a party. All right, I'm going to take a phone call. Gil in Arizona. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. You kind of perked my interest up when you talked about Palestine and the old coins from Palestine. I'm 77 years old, and in 1953 I used to collect stamps, and my dad bought me a worldwide stamp album, which had every stamp ever published from 1847, which was the first stamps from Great Britain. Anyway, I looked up, I dug out the old stamp album, and sure enough, here's Palestinian stamps from 1918 to 1945. And then after that, there were Palestinian stamps issued under Egyptian occupation. So, Palestine's a state. I thought you'd find that interesting.
Well, I do find it interesting, and I think I've got one stamp from Palestine that somebody sent me. But again, if you go back to Israel and Palestine, the maps tell the story, and I'm posting it to the main page right now so it's easier to find. You look down at the bottom and you see all these photos and all these maps going back to the Middle Ages that clearly are marked Palestine. And so Israel has been trying to brainwash the people of the modern world into thinking that Palestine never existed. Golda Meir came out and said, there's no such thing as Palestine or the Palestinians. And later Israeli leaders said, oh, they just made that up just to annoy us. There are no real Palestinians or Palestine. It's a made-up people and a made-up nation, and it's all the fault of the anti-Semites.
So I guess they counterfeited their postage stamps from Palestine then, because I got a lot of old ones right here. Well, that's all I wanted to say. I thought it was quite interesting.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I am, in fact, putting up this article right now. It's going to take about 5 minutes to clear the cache. And then you can take a look down at the bottom at all the photos and all the maps that you have that document, there was a Palestine, and it was full of Palestinians, and they were just minding their own business, and all of a sudden Israel comes on in and says, God gave us this land. Gil, we're going to let you go and switch over to Richard in Alabama. Aloha, Richard. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Richard dropped.
Richard just dropped. Okay, getting on back to computers. As you know, Apple has long had or tried to maintain a reputation that they are free from malware. And as it turns out, as they gain more and more market share, they become, shall we say, economically viable to the cyber criminals. And there are, in fact, there's a lot of malware out there now targeting the Apple platforms. And some of them are very clever and insidious. And as it turns out, according to WikiLeaks, the CIA has backdoored the Apple OS along with Windows, and reportedly along with Linux as well. And every time the CIA bores a hole in the security of any of these computer systems, it creates an opportunity for the cyber criminals to go on in and do their mischief. And the computer companies in return seem to add on a lot of password and dual verification and the rest of it, which I think is really more about convincing you your devices are secure than actually making them more secure. Because obviously all of this added rigmarole doesn't seem to stop the cyber criminals one little tiny bit here. And apparently Apple is in financial trouble. They've been losing some market share lately, especially the Android devices. And Apple has now been ordered to pay $500 million with a B dollars for using processor technology that was patented by a school. And basically the University of Wisconsin at Madison filed a patent infringement suit, and it's still ongoing. But a judge has ruled that Apple must pay the university $506 million. The judgment was originally much smaller, but Apple continued to use that technology even after the court said you got to put a hold on it. And so the original judgment was $234 million in damages. Now it's up to $506. This will drag through the courts in years. Okay, we're going to take a phone call. Rick in Arizona, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike. Foxconn is on my mind. That announcement that Donald Trump made yesterday from the White House that they were going to build a manufacturer. Look, I don't know about you, but I don't believe that thing will ever be built. We'll probably forget about it a year from now. I think it's propaganda.
Could be.
I don't see how Foxconn. Look, I know people from China that have relatives working for Foxconn, and they make $10 a day. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to come over here and build this manufacturing plant, if it does get built, I will presume it's probably going to be robots and automation, and the people working there are going to be groundskeepers and office personnel,
management personnel.
What do you think?
Well, it's nice that we're trying to talk about creating jobs and bringing manufacturing back, but the scale is way too small because for every one new job Donald Trump creates, we have 2,000 Americans lose the job they had yesterday. Trump is fighting an uphill battle on this one. And you're probably right.
What about the... Go ahead.
I was going to say, you're probably right. Foxconn will use a lot of automation. I think they already do over there in China. And it's nice there are going to be some jobs. It will probably drive up the price of the Apple products being made there.
Well, they're going to be making flat panel TVs, but I mean, why wouldn't build it where manufacturing was really destroyed, like in Pennsylvania or Ohio? I mean, they didn't have that problem in Wisconsin.
No, they didn't. I mean, Wisconsin's primary economy is based on their dairy farming and agriculture. You're right. That factory should have gone to a state that has a prior manufacturing background, if for no other reason that you've got people already living there who understand more about manufacturing than they do about milking cows.
Yeah. I would, if there was a sports book here, I would be booking bets that this thing will never be built. It's absolutely, I don't know. We'll see. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, you got it. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. I'm going to share a little personal story with you here. I'm sure those of you on BAM User are noticing on the commercial breaks I'm playing with some items over here. I was telling everybody I didn't want to upgrade my phone until I absolutely had to. And the other day we had a little bit of an accident where Claire's Android phone, which has been a pain in the neck ever since we got it, got knocked into a sink of water and started acting very bizarrely afterwards. And so we decided it was time to finally upgrade. Our contract had expired. And we went over to AT&T, and I have to say the people at AT&T gave us a really good deal. They went over our existing plan. And the upshot of it is Claire and I both got iPhone 7s. She got the Plus, the one with the big screen. And we each got an iPad and yet our monthly payment has gone down. That's a sweet deal. Now, if we could figure out a way to take our car and drop it in the sink, I think I would be a happy man. But unfortunately, my experience with the current iPhone and iTunes and the iPad and iTunes, it leaves a lot to be desired. When we got our first iPhone and iTunes, it all worked together just fine. We're on a Windows desktop here. And we know that Apple has always looked on the Windows platforms with disdain, and apparently their care and concern and support for Windows has declined even since then. And as wonderful as the hardware is, getting these things to interface with iTunes on Windows 7 proved to be quite problematic. And I did a web search and I found out a lot of people are having the same problems that we are. Still cannot actually get Claire's new iPhone to sync with iTunes on her machine. It took me a couple of hours to go through the rigmarole on mine. And a lot of other things are going on. Apparently, if you've got credit in iTunes, it's no longer available to the App Store, which is very frustrating. It used to be if you had iTunes credit, it was usable anywhere in the Apple empire. And there are actually some noticeable bugs in the operating system on the pad. It'll come up and ask you to input some data, and the keyboard area will just be totally blank and insensitive. And so it isn't just Android that seems to be going downhill in terms of software quality. It also seems to be Apple as well, and that's kind of sad because they used to be like really the best. And I'm sure I'll work through all of these problems, and these devices are going to be very useful to us. I mean, it works as a phone, which is all I really wanted to begin with. And now, of course, we're finding out that the CIA is already backdoored all of this stuff. All right, we're going to take a phone call from Richard in Washington State. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Mike, the other day here, 2 days ago, on the radio, they said that the Bonneville Power Administration, which controls the dams on the Columbia,
yes,
is going to have a 5% increase on rates.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason cited was lower consumption rates, so they're losing revenue.
Yeah, we've seen that even here in Hawaii. Where, a few years ago, they started, encouraging the use of solar panels. And as people were using less and less electricity, the Hawaii Electric Company applied for and got a rate increase so they could still make the same money. Then HECO actually put pressure on the Hawaii government to stop issuing construction permits for the addition of solar panels to buildings. And the solar industry really has suffered since then. Now we're being told there's going to be a major increase to our rates, double-digit. Supposedly to pay for the adoption of green technology by the Hawaii Electric Company. And that means probably more of these windmills that seem to tear themselves apart very quickly. But again, you're right. It's all about greed and keeping the money flowing. And the more you conserve, the less product you try and use, they're going to charge you the same thing for it. We've seen that with our electric bill already. We work very hard to keep our load down. Very good about turning off lights. We're all LED here. And yet, even as our usage graph goes down, the bill price goes up.
There is one other thing I have noticed since Trump got in.
Yeah.
There's a considerable amount of terraforming here. Since the winds usually come in from the Pacific here, and since Trump came in, there's a lot less terraforming now than there used to be. There used to be quite a bit of it over this area.
Well, okay, I'm not sure what you mean by terraforming, and you're saying winds from the Pacific. How do you define terraforming?
The jet stream. These planes, flying up there, creating these clouds.
Well, okay, this is a topic that generally you and I are going to have to disagree on, so thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to let you go there. Now, getting on back to computers. Interesting article coming out of Blacklisted News, the real costs of cheap surveillance. And the article is basically pointing out, as the technology advances and cameras become smaller and less expensive, count on the government to just start using them everywhere. As it becomes less and less costly to spy on the American people, count on the government to be doing it more. Remember back, I think it was during Bush was in office, they called it total information awareness. The government felt they had a right to know absolutely everything about you and what you were doing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even though it is obviously a violation of the Fourth Amendment. But then the government is treating us like we're their property and they have a right to keep us in line. And no, we're not their property. In fact, the way this country was set up, they're supposed to be working for us, not the other way around. And with all this data that's out there, some of it is being put to some very bizarre use. The U.S. Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has opened an inquiry into this idea that's circulating around the credit rating agencies, where along with looking at your bank accounts and your credit history and your earnings, they're going to be looking at the credit worthiness of your friends to decide how good credit you have. If all your friends have got good credit, all well and good. But if you have a bunch of close friends who are in serious economic trouble, they could actually lower your credit rating, figuring that at some point you might have to step in or be willing to step in to help out your friend. And that seems to be a little bit over the edge, and the U.S. Consumer Finance Protection Bureau seems to agree. Right now, with the nation awash in all of this freely available data about all of our lives, we do need to start thinking about some kind of control. And again, targeted advertising, yeah, that seems to make sense. I don't want to be bothered with ads for things I don't intend to buy. On the other hand, I don't want to be saturated with ads for something I just bought. And that happens a lot with this data. You'll go and you'll buy something, and all of a sudden your websites and your email boxes are full of all these ads for more of the same. I only need one. I don't need 400 of the same thing. So they need to work on the intelligence inside that system as well. But the idea that this data is available to companies that are basically going to pass judgment on you for your credit worthiness, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. Now, one of the best known names in computer security is Kaspersky, and Kaspersky has come out with a brand new version of their antivirus program, and here is the good news: it is free. Now, it's obviously the bottom of the spectrum of all their various products, but it's called Kaspersky Free, and you can basically have the essential protection on your computer for no cost. And that means basically antivirus protection for your browser and email box and your PC, and basic self-defense measures and anti-phishing measures. So definitely you want to go and take a look at that. It's called Kaspersky Free, and they're giving it away for free. And frankly, given that Kaspersky is a Russian company, I certainly trust them a lot more than any antivirus and malware products coming from any American company, knowing how all of them have been compromised by the intelligence agencies. Many years ago, the FBI, one of the earliest FBI spywares was called Magic Lantern. And the FBI literally went to all the antivirus companies and said, this is what it looks like. Make sure your databases won't spot it. And, of course, the next thing that happened is the real cyber criminals started making their malware match that same signature. So the door through the antivirus software carved by the FBI for Magic Lantern started becoming a portal for cyber criminals to go on in and do what they were going to do. And apparently the government is totally unconcerned with the epidemic of cybercrime going on in this country. I guess in their view it's a small price to pay to make sure that the American people, that the law-abiding American citizens are not thinking those double plus ungood thoughts. Now again, I think we need to understand that all of this spying on all of us is really propaganda to try and scare us into silence, which is obviously not working. But the fact of the matter is that if all of this is working the way we're told it's working, the sheer volume of data they're collecting precludes any real analysis that's going to lead to any real information, and that may be why they have yet to actually find a real terrorist with any of this stuff. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to take a phone call. Tom from Oregon. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi. Last night, the BBC Panorama program broadcast a show called A Prescription for Murder, 60 minutes on how SSRIs are a danger, and it's an incredible show, and I think you'd be interested. I'm going to send you an email that will have a pointer to that.
Yeah, I'd heard about that. I wasn't able to watch it. I was going to hunt it down on YouTube. But all of a sudden, in Great Britain, there's a lot of media attention that is going into this right now, this story. And we're going to be talking a lot about this. In fact, probably this is a good time here. BBC SSRIs and a prescription for murder. And not too surprisingly, spokespeople for the pharmaceutical industry are out there saying, oh, it's just nonsense. It's ridiculous. How could you say this? And by the way, Amazon is now teaming up with the pharmaceutical corporations to launch online pharmaceutical sales. So, again, it's all about the money.
This program won't be broadcast in this country, but it's excellent. And may I just change the topic before you let me go?
Yeah.
Could you, you've had a hydrogen guy named Mike Strisky on your show before?
Yes, I did.
He's got some big news, and if I could recommend having him on again here, there's a lot going on, and I recommended Stan Osserman from down there in Honolulu before, and if you've I hope you haven't decided that he's not worthy of your show, because he's got some great things to talk about. And in the email that I'm going to send you right away, it's got his contact information on there.
Okay, I think I tried to contact him once before, and I didn't get a reply.
He might have been out. He just got back from the Big Island, but and he's got some great things. It's called the Blue Planet Foundation. Is doing some incredible things down there. He was down there, and that's the Hank Rogers Foundation.
Okay.
They're responsible for that 100 that renewable law that Hawaii passed, and they've got some great things going on there. I'll send you he's there at his office today. I'll send that right away. Thank you very much, Mike. You're going to love this BBC this Panorama program is absolutely stunning, and it's just sad that we're not going to get to see it in this country.
We definitely won't. Probably all we're going to hear about it will be from the corporate media about how ridiculous it all is, the same way they treat anybody who questions human-caused global warming and the rest of that nonsense. All right, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. Now, Iran is not building nuclear bombs, but that doesn't mean they have not been busy. They have built a new space center, and they inaugurated it with a successful test of a satellite carrier. And, of course, you just know what the Western media is going to say. Oh, Iran is testing long-range rockets. They're going to come for us. And so, but basically, this is standard rocket that is going to be used for all Iranian space projects in low Earth orbit. So good for them. Iran is also building a medical school down in Iraq. And it is, in fact, the first medical school built by a foreign government inside Iraq. So Iran is stepping on in to help sort of improve life for the Iraqis following 14 years of endless U.S. bombing, invasion, waterboarding, and various other things there. Speaking of global warming, and once again we're seeing yet another report, this is out of IntelliHub, basically yet another study is showing systematic scientific fraud to alter the temperature data to support the global warming story. The raw data does not show any warming. In fact, it shows a little bit of cooling. But all of these government agencies, NASA, NOAA, Hadley Climate Research Unit, have literally been going on in and doing statistical corrections to the data, all of which involve shoving that more recent end of the curve upward. They're still out there committing outright fraud. So we're going to take a break here for commercials. When we come on back, we're going to be doing more about global warming, pharmaceuticals, various other problems associated with those. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I just found that BBC Panorama program, Prescription for Murder, and I've posted the YouTube video to whatreallyhappened.com. And again, take a few minutes for the cache to cycle, and then it will be visible. Getting on back to human-caused global warming, what's really interesting is there is a growing gap between what NASA is saying officially and then what they report about their actual data. And, of course, those of us who work there, especially after the new NASA came on in, are always saying NASA stands for never a straight answer, which we got to deal with during the Viking mission, and Dr. Gilbert Levin, who is still waiting for vindication on that whole issue. But apparently NASA is confirming sea levels are falling and have been falling across the entire planet for 2 years. You're never going to see that in the corporate media, because there are still out there, humans are warming the planet, the ice caps are going to melt, the coasts are going to flood. By the way, out in California, Mammoth Mountain is going to, they're still open for business, for skiing. They're not planning to close until the 6th of August. That's how long the snow lasted that fell last year. Been hearing about all this massive flooding that's taking place. Where do you think that water came from? All the snow. Remember back on 2000? The corporate media was parroting the line from the carbon Nazis, snowfalls are now a thing of the past. We are all concerned with our exposure to glyphosate now that the World Health Organization has declared it a probable carcinogen, and I'm sure that they would have said it is a definite carcinogen, but they were just subject to intense lobbying by Monsanto. But they still came on out and said it's a probable human carcinogen. And it's being sprayed on gardens. It's in the weed killer. They're spraying it on produce. For some reason, they think it's going to act as a preservative, and probably it is if it kills the mold, various other parasites. And apparently up in New Brunswick, there's an ongoing fight because apparently without telling people that it was going on, the forestry industry in New Brunswick has been spraying public forests with glyphosate. And apparently they're spraying these forests to kill not only pest plants, but hardwood trees that are competing with their softwood plantation seedlings. I mean, they're almost taking the Agent Orange approach to forestry management here. This is being done by New Brunswick's Forestry Department in partnership with the various industries. And the people of New Brunswick are justified in their concern, because when you're spraying it, the wind can take it. You don't know where it's going to go. It's a probable human carcinogen. This is a very troubling story. It's being reported in Russia today. Actually, it's been reported in a lot of different places. Apparently, researchers in Oregon have become the first to attempt to create a genetically modified human embryo in the United States. And they're attempting to demonstrate, or they claim they've demonstrated, they can eliminate certain diseases in offspring using this CRISPR technology. Now remember, not too long ago, CRISPR was called into doubt because along with editing the DNA that it wanted to, it was also editing other parts of the genome. Now they're claiming that they have been able to deal with that problem. But again, it seems like they're rushing forward so fast with this. And this is such a dangerous technology. But led by Shukrat Mitalipov, a team of scientists at Oregon Health and Science University used the CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing technology to alter human DNA in single-cell embryos. Apparently, they grabbed an egg just after the moment of fertilization, or they fertilized it in the lab, and then they started editing the DNA before it could start splitting, dividing. And apparently Technology Review, which is put out by MIT, and by the way, is a very good resource for staying on top of technology. And they did a report on it. My father graduated MIT, and as a result, we had a permanent subscription to Technology Review, and oh boy, every month that showed up, I could hardly wait. There was all that cool stuff in there. Now, speaking of cool stuff in tech, apparently, and this is also in Oregon, there's this barn, it's ramshackle, it's leaning, and apparently inside were stored 100,000 pages of chemical industry secrets. And apparently they were collected by somebody who was involved in a lawsuit involving harm from chemicals some years ago, and then the property was sold, and the new owners went on out to the barn, took a look at what was in all those boxes, and said, oh boy. So those documents have now been collected by environmental activists through a project called the Poison Papers, and they have accumulated a library of 200,000 pages of information that lays out a 40-year history of deceit and collusion involving the chemical industry and the regulatory agencies that were supposed to be protecting human health and the environment. So when we talk about how the Minerals Management Service turned a blind eye to the lack of maintenance on the Deepwater Horizon, when we look at how the Nuclear Regulatory Commission kind of shrugged their shoulders when San Onofre was pulling a fast one with the heat exchangers, it's business as usual. These are not new developments. It's not a new serious decline in the quality of life in the United States. It's been going on all along. I still remember following 9/11 and the collapse of the towers and all that asbestos dust in the air, and the first responders were told by the head of the Environmental Protection Agency it was safe to work down there without protection. And of course, many of those first responders have spent the rest of their lives dealing with mesothelioma, various other cancers from the toxic materials that they were exposed to. Now, we've been talking about obesity, and I'm not being smug because I just got done losing 100 pounds. But the concern is the chemicals in the food, which is a big part of it. And our foods are saturated with those chemicals. MSG, high fructose corn syrup, hormones in the meat and poultry, aspartame, and it's having an effect. Somebody just did a survey of obesity in countries, and guess who came out on top? We're number one. The U.S. crushes all other countries in the latest obesity study. I guess the U.S. tripped and fell on those other countries. And apparently we have just over 38% of the adult American population fits the medical definition of obese. Not just overweight, not just fat, but obese. 38%. Now, I remember when I was a kid, 1950s, 1960s, obese people were very, very, very rare, and usually it was explained that there was some kind of a medical issue. Everybody was slender. Some people were a little heavier than others. But as these chemicals started being introduced into processed food, rates of obesity started climbing. Because the chemicals make you want to eat more, therefore you will buy more, and the food companies will make more money. That's what's driving this. And we now have 38% of the American people are now obese. And of course, obesity leads to other serious health issues, for which the pharmaceutical corporations have plenty of prescription medicines to sell. It's a vicious cycle. And nobody wants to deal with the root causes of obesity, The politically correct people are out there saying, no, you shouldn't look down on overweight people. Unfortunately, obese people can and are discriminated against. Airlines will force you to buy a second seat. I mean, it was very frustrating for me the last time I had to fly on an airline. I was already 60 pounds down from my maximum weight, and that seat was still tiny and crushing me. And it's a serious problem. All the more so because if you have 38% of your population, your adult population, are obese, just who are you going to draft into the military when the war really gets going? Because people who are obese, they're not really very good at, running across a battlefield. And again, it's all driven by the money. We're living under fascism, which is corporate greed and government power working together against the general population. And that's why companies are allowed to sell food with chemicals to make you eat more. That's why you're ordered to buy and use vaccines, which may be ineffective at best and actually cause harm at worst. But you can't sue the vaccine companies when that happens. If your baby dies from one of those rounds of vaccines, they'll claim you killed your own kid, throw you in jail. We have to protect the money. We have to protect the profitability. All hail the dollar. That's the real religion of the United States right now, money. All other sins against the money are punished. Any threat to the profitability of a large corporation is a serious, serious crime. Meanwhile, story coming out of Blacklisted News, there's been an audit done that shows that pharmaceutical companies are still cheating by suppressing trials that don't go very well. Now, it's been years since all of the pharmaceutical companies agreed to participate in the registry of all trials, meaning that they would supposedly end the practice of only reporting on trials whose outcomes they were pleased with, which was about half the time. Half the trials that they would do ended badly. But apparently the pharmaceutical companies have been cheating. They're not reporting all the trials to this registry, only the ones that have the good results. Now, getting back onto prescription antidepressants, story out of naturalnews.com. There's been another horrible story. This is originated with pharmadeathclock.com. Keeps track of the number of victims killed by chemical warfare by the pharmaceutical corporations on humanity. And they're estimating that over 703,000 people have been killed by SSRIs since the year 2000, 17 years. And one of the stories they have is a man who was perfectly fine, married, had a kid, had a job, everything going fine, and for some reason the doctor put him on antidepressants, and all of a sudden he gets it into his head to kill his son, and he can't help himself. I mean, these SSRIs, and by the way, the mechanism by which they're supposed to treat depression has been shown not to work. And the side effects of these SSRIs include drowsiness, insomnia, nausea, sexual side effects, anxiety, agitation, paranoid delusions, and hallucinations. Remember, all those mass shooters, the gun grabbers, wag at us, were either on or withdrawing from these medications. And it's when you're withdrawing, you are most at risk of having a psychotic break. Now, I say all, and I mean almost all, because more recently, the medical records of these mass shooters are being withheld because too many people are making that link. Apparently over at Bristol University, a student, 21-year-old Elsa Skebury, was a top-grade pupil, and a doctor diagnosed her with clinical depression, put her on medication, she committed suicide. Do you know that there is no actual mechanism for saying this person is depressed. All psychological diagnoses are purely subjective on the part of the practitioner. And if you're in the business of making money with therapy sessions or selling pharmaceuticals, you're going to see everybody, oh, you're all depressed. You all have a mental illness. You want to eat safe, healthy, organic food. You're suffering from orthorexia nervosa. And we have this little pill here that's a concentrated Big Mac. Another story, this again from the BBC, called The Batman Killer. And apparently it's part of this Prescription for Murder show. And it talks about John Holmes, who murdered 12 people watching Batman at the Colorado Cinema in 2012. Did his psychiatric medication cause a problem? Now, we've already done a study here where we took graphs of the per capita usage of antidepressants and we overlaid it over the per capita incidence of domestic violence. Obviously, mass shootings and suicides make the news. Other forms of violence do not. It's part of the background noise. Road rage, bar fights, things like that. And there was a clear correlation. The more people were taking these antidepressants, the more we saw domestic violence incidents. The food companies are turning us into obese people, and the drug companies are turning us into lunatics, all in the name of making a quick buck. By the way, a little bit of humor amidst all these police shootings. Apparently over in St. Paul, somebody made up a metal silkscreen sign that says, "Police startle easily," and it's got the warning, "Police startle easily," and there's a little cartoon figure of a police officer jumped up in the air, his legs apart, gun in both hands, firing. And the signs are being put up. The city's taking them down as fast as they can find them. And apparently they're starting to show up in Minneapolis as well. But it's only funny because we know it's true, that the police are out of control. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of the program here today. Going to catch up on some headlines. Apparently over at the United Nations Security Council, there was a resolution condemning the terror attacks on the Russian embassy, and the United States actually vetoed it. This was a resolution that was condemning the shelling of the Russian embassy in Damascus by terrorist forces, and the United States vetoed it. That does not make the U.S. look very good. It's just another way of trying to stick a finger in Russia's eye. And unfortunately, it does look like they're having an effect where Russia is losing their patience. Putin is accusing U.S. lawmakers of insolence over the sanctions. And Putin has said it is impossible to endlessly tolerate this kind of insolence towards our country. This practice is unacceptable. It destroys international relations and international law. And he's absolutely right. We have a lawless government in this land. I mean, they have plenty of laws for us, but they don't follow any themselves. Now, a bipartisan group of senators has gotten together to wag the finger at Attorney General Jeff Sessions over the marijuana issue, where Jeff Sessions is trying to find some way that he can block or bypass all of these state laws that are starting to decriminalize possession of marijuana. And those states where they have legalized it for recreational use, they've seen a huge boost to tax revenues. Now, obviously, the big alcohol and the tobacco companies are much opposed to this, but the reality is that marijuana is a lot less damaging to your health than either alcohol or tobacco. But Jeff Sessions is fully on board with keeping marijuana a Schedule I drug. So we've got these senators who came on out and said, really, this is not your job to go on out and do this. And apparently the committee, the Senate Appropriations Committee, approved the Rohrabacher-Blumenauer Amendment, which originally passed in 2014 and it prevents the Department of Justice from using federal funds to prosecute individuals in states with medical marijuana legalization or marijuana legalization. So that is the law. And if Sessions ignores that, that's Trump's handle to fire him right then and there. I think that would be a really good thing here. Reader just sent in an interesting photo, and apparently for the next mission to Mars, they're actually developing a little robot helicopter to go along to Mars and send a picture, and obviously very large rotors to deal with a very thin atmosphere. And long spindly legs, and it looks really kind of cool. I remember back in the 1970s when I worked at JPL, they were trying to develop an inflatable airplane that would go to Mars and fly around and take pictures. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Please stay tuned for the John Stadmiller program. Please take what you're learning here and at the website, share it with everybody. Working together, a million voices, we can shout down the propagandists at the corporate media and the government. We'll be back tomorrow with the lovely Lady Claire. Aloha, America.